Hi, HR Nation. Welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today, we're joined by Susan Knolla, Director of People Analytics and Compensation at JD Irving. Welcome to the show, Susan. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Chris?
Not too bad, not too bad. Where are you tuning in or joining me from?
I am based in the east coast of Canada in the beautiful city of St. John, New Brunswick.
Nice. Thanks for joining us. Before we jump in, a little bit more, tell everyone a little bit about yourself personally and your journey to where we are now.
For sure, yeah. I am originally from St. John, but I started in HR by accident. I moved to Europe and took a 2-week temp job that now has turned into a 20-some plus year career.
Wow.
With different organizations. So I was based out of the Netherlands and worked and lived in Europe for about 14 years and then got sent back to Canada as an expat and ended up staying here and coming home and taking on a role with JD Irving Limited. So I've done probably just about every role you can think of within HR with the exception of payroll, which I hope I'll never have to do. No offense to anyone that does payroll, but definitely
we've got technology to keep you covered now. It's fine.
That's right. So I've been in just about every role, and the one that I'm in now is obviously people analytics, and recently took on compensation as well, just based on my background. But data has always been a big part of all the roles that I've had. So
amazing. And tell everyone a little bit more about the company, just so people aren't aware of the business. Sure.
Yeah, we're a privately owned multinational with a multitude of different divisions. So the company has trains, transportation industry, tugboats. We make French fries. That's the best division.
Wait. So you make French fries and tugboats in the same company?
French fries, tugboats. We have retail stores. We make tissue, which was great during COVID because we all got tissue. We have a forestry group. We actually grow the trees, cut down the trees, mill the trees, make the paper, a whole supply chain of forestry. So a little bit of everything within the organization. Wow. What makes it very, very interesting.
How did it start? What industry did you start in?
I started in oil and gas.
I mean the business. I mean the JD, because there were so many products. Because I'm thinking of as a founder of a company, I'm like, how do I go from tugboats to French fries to tissue? Like, where did it start? Like, do you know?
Yeah, so it's a family-owned business, and they started over 180 years ago. Wow. In the forestry industry. And then I think they just continued the supply chain from there and expanded as such. So it is very diverse, and it's there are two brothers that are the head of this group, and then there's another facet of the family that has other businesses in the area as well. But this JD Irving group, it's about 19,000 people and 12 different divisions if you don't break out the support divisions, and 52 different companies within those, and expanding into the US now as well. So it's interesting.
Wow. Is it still majority owned by the family, or is it
completely
100%? Wow. What, that's like so uncommon in this day and age as well, right? Especially at the size and scale of the company.
Yeah, there's not a lot of privately owned at this size organizations left.
Yeah. We'll get into that a bit more, but you said accidentally part-time job. Before I got you into it, because most people, there's not over 300 episodes, I could probably name about 10 people that planned on working in HR. Honestly, that's something that surprised me when I first got into it. I was like, no one really chose this job. It seems that everyone. So how did that happen? Talk me through that.
So I moved to Holland and answered a temp ad because I wasn't working. My degree was in psychology, and had I stayed in Canada, I was going to go to law school. But I met a Dutchman, and I moved to the Netherlands, and there was just an ad at a temp agency that they wanted someone that could speak English to take notes for 2 weeks in this oil and gas group. And when I went there, that wasn't the job at all. So they had a need for someone to do kind of their office administration and regional secretary work. And at that time, back in the day, this will date me to my age, but a personnel department. And they didn't truly have HR, what we would think.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And so we I worked with them and ended up being able to set up the entire personnel department function.
Wow.
Through a cross-organizational activity. So it was really interesting. It was great learning, and I did my certification, and then from there I went on to IT consulting in The Hague, and worked there for over 7 years, and got sent back to Canada as an expat because I was Canadian, so I would understand how that would work. So they sent me back home to work in Ottawa and Montreal and Toronto, and then I ended up coming back home to New Brunswick.
Cool.
So then went into contact centers and did that because your choices in New Brunswick were pretty much contact centers or working for JD Irving. And I, at the time, didn't want to work for JD Irving. So I went and worked in contact centers, and then they
got you in the end.
Me, and it's true, they did. They sucked me in. It's like the mafia. But they talked to me a few times, and I said no. And then finally I said, okay, I'll come talk to you. And now I've been here 10 years. So it's very interesting.
That's amazing. Like, considering your background and experience, the journey where you are to where you come now. Where did kind of the technical ability and skill set come in regards to people analytics? Because, I'm sure when you started talking about, when you probably started doing some of this work, it probably wasn't even called people analytics back then. For sure. Probably something else, right? I feel like the terminology's only been around for the last 5 years before that.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think it started when I did my psych degree because, experimentation, building experiments, doing statistical analysis was something that you did. And I really liked that. I found it extremely interesting. Math was always not necessarily my favorite subject, but probably my best subject in school. So kind of always had an inclination to measure that. And I've always been really, really curious about how things work and how it's put together and what's cause and effect. And if you do this, what happens with that? So I think, naturally I had that inclination. And then when I moved into to contact centers, everything was measured. So everything was numbers, everything was looking at your data. We did it all in a really cool tool called Excel and just built everything out.
It's really cool, advanced stuff.
Modeling. Built our charts, did all our trending and didn't have any tools. And so by the time I got to JDI, I spent a lot of time complaining about, why weren't we measuring stuff and why didn't we have this data? And also, I think being in HR, you kind of always have to justify your existence as overhead and how do you prove your value. So being able to do that with data is really impactful. And so it just was something that I thought worked really well from a business context, but also personally, I like seeing, you take those experiments or whatever you're going to implement in your organization and you test it out and you look at the data and see what it says. And then you get verification. Does it work? Does it not work? And where you spend your money and your time. So I think it just natural inclination and some of the business impact reasons kind of drove me to where I am now.
Well, it's interesting now how it's flipped, 180, where the business can't get enough of people analytics. Like during the last 15 months, right, all of a sudden you've been pushed to the forefront and the business is turning to you and the team. And correct me if I'm wrong, everyone, all your peers seem to be speaking to, they've never had so many people knocking on the door asking to help. And they've been, yourselves and the HR function itself have been leading the way, right, throughout the last 15 months.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that it's, that it's new, I guess, that it's still kind of new. And I teach a data literacy course here at JDI, and mainly for HR practitioners, but I do it with IT folks and folks in the operation as well. But it's interesting to watch that progression in the 3 years that I've been leading this function. Before that, I was leading the talent function. But to watch them go from, data scary, why do I have to look at numbers, to using it every day, presenting to their leaders, asking for more and more and more. It's been a huge progression over the last 3 years.
For other peers thinking about setting up something similar, because that actually was one of my questions I was going to get to, what advice would you give to them when you set this out to upskill your team and obviously and filter that out to the rest of the business, as you mentioned, as well? What were some of the challenges you faced? What went well? What didn't?
I think the hardest part is having good data and having good data governance and having the right access to things. I think that's the biggest challenge, and it's still a challenge and something that we're still working on. but I wouldn't let that slow you down. I'd say just jump in and come up with a plan. So I had a kind of a 3-year roadmap, and it started with building some data visualizations over the data that we have. So we use HCM, Oracle, and that's the biggest source of our information. So we spent a lot of time really, I teach in my class, 80% planning, 20% execution. So planning out, what did we want to show? What business questions did we want to answer? What was our key focus areas? And then working with my peers across the organization, the HR leaders across the organization, to really hone in what made sense for their business. So a lot of pre-work up front would be my advice. Don't worry about, that analytics maturity curve, getting to predictive and all that cool shiny box stuff.
That's what people
Get
chase.
your foundation right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's great. And there's a lot of hype around it. I think that's calmed down now. But we don't have a lot of predictive models. We really don't have any predictive models. We're getting the foundation right. So build your visualizations and then get that out to your people and then teach them how to use that and ingrain it in the business. So I think, those two things are really important. If you're starting out, have somebody that's skilled and can build good, impactful visualizations, and then also get some good training or create some good training for your business partners and get them to not be afraid of using data in their day-to-day life.
Yeah. During your training, how do you break it up? Is it over a few weeks, modules? What does it consist of practically?
It's 2 days, and then I have it modularized into supporting e-learning sessions as well that they can go back and reference. But day 1's about data literacy and data governance, and then day 2 is basic statistics and visualization and storytelling. Mm-hmm. And then it's complemented with kind of an on-the-job piece. So they go through the sessions, they take some quizzes, and then they have to do an on-the-job project. So they have to go away, find a business problem, actually work it with their operational partners, use data to show how they've done that, and then come back and present to me. And then I grade it, and then they get a beautiful certificate signed by me that they
no pressure then. I was like, oh my God, I got to go see Susan today. got to make sure my numbers are right as well. That's
good. Interesting though, because some HR people just say, oh, I went to the class and I look at dashboards and that's their project. And I'm like, no, that's not going to do it. So
I know that's what I like. You made it practical. You actually said, let's do a use case and actually go through it and present it, because then you really, it's because, again, like how many courses do we do, training, that we actually end up executing on that? That's the hard part, right? As well. So it's good. And it forces people to actually obtain the information, execute, roadmap it, plan it, and present it. And presenting it is probably one of the hard parts that I see many people go wrong because they kind of overcomplicate it. There's no storytelling, and then people are just not engaged. They're just like disconnect from it.
It's been interesting. And then we've had them, so we do like a quarterly showcase. So we have the group come in quarterly and they actually present their certification presentations. And then we have other members of the business and the operations talk about the analytics work they're doing as well. So that expands their scope outside of just the HR realm, lets them see what the business is doing in other areas and give them some ideas on how they can use data as well.
Yeah. When that happened, did you see an influx of other leaders that perhaps weren't part of it and now wanted to get involved because they've seen I bet.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was asked if I would take that training and adapt it for operations and do it with everyone. And I tentatively agreed, but time just hasn't allowed that. So I do some special sessions for different groups if I'm asked. But I haven't had an opportunity to do that with my regular day job.
You're like, I've got enough that I think I need to do right now. During the last 15 months, what has been the main questions that the businesses have been coming to you with and to ask for your help?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, again, we're still in the foundational stage. So a lot of the questions are what I would still call very reactionary. So, why are we seeing turnover in these areas? We've got concerns around engagement. How do we correlate that or look at other data points to make sure our people are happy and retained? We're starting some work on diversity and inclusion and preparing for, in Canada, we've got pay equity requirements that are changing this fall. So really making sure we have our data aligned to that. the biggest ask is, and it's an area that I'm pretty passionate about, is how do we reduce kind of that non-value added report running, Excel churning activity in the business. So we spent a lot of time working with the divisions on, what are you doing there? Why are you doing it? Does it make sense? And how do you either dashboard that or automate that? So you get more time to work with your partners on solving business problems than, cutting and pasting and creating pivot tables and things like that. So that's been a big area of focus for us on that compliance and streamlining things and automating things.
Well, in a company with so much history, and I bet that's really difficult, those habits, and I'm sure the answers to why do you do it that way? Because we've always done it this way. I'm sure a lot of the answers, right? Or those managers and leaders have just created their own way of working over many, many years, and trying to undo that is so tough, right?
It's true. A lot of change management and a lot of conversations. And I think the good part is if you partner really well with the business, they're always open to new things, and if it makes sense. So that's
no one loves admin. Come on, I've never met anyone out there that's like, I really love doing this. So you mentioned preparing for the federal pay equity legislation in Canada. When does that come into place? And what are the kind of steps that you need to take to make sure that you're compliant, I suppose the question is the word.
So we have 3 federally regulated businesses, and we've done employment equity, which is different. I know it sounds the same, but it took me a while to wrap my head around it too. So we've done employment equity reporting for several years, and we actually just automated that process, which we talk about people going and doing manual work. When we met with the business and they showed us what we were doing, anyway, it was crazy. So we took about 3 months worth of reporting and work out to automate a workflow to populate that. But what they're also going to be required to do this fall is the pay equity piece, and it's really around gender. So a lot of data cleanup, a lot of analytics, and it's really making sure that based on position classes, men and women are paid consistently or fairly across the organization. So it's quite a lot of data gathering. We have to distill everything down to an hourly rate for men and women, and that includes their benefits or cars or incentives. Everything has to be compiled into that hourly rate, and then we have to compare them to each other and see if there's any gaps, and then have a plan to close that gap. So it's been a lot of interesting research and focus. And then the businesses will each have a committee that gets engaged in this, looks at our process, challenges it potentially, and wants us to look at something different. And we'll start that in the fall. So all the pre-work's being done now to prepare and take a look at where we are. And a lot of analytics involved with that. And then also a lot of process pieces to make sure that we do it right and we do it fairly, and we're open and transparent with our employees. So
yeah, and just because we don't have that over here, and if I'm wrong, please someone tell me, because I haven't come across that before. So is that now a legal requirement to do that?
It is.
Wow.
It is. I mean, I'd probably equate it to your GDPR reporting. Back in the day.
We don't have one in the UK, do we? We don't have something similar in the UK, unless I've somehow missed it. We don't have the same a similar thing in Europe, do we?
Well, I think your original data protection in 1994 started in the UK.
In terms of pay equity, I mean.
Oh, sorry, pay equity? No, I don't think you do.
Sorry, I should have been clear. Yeah, no, don't do we? We should, because I feel like it's great, because it holds companies accountable. It forces them actually to do the right thing. And also, as a business, you want to have that data as well. So it's kind of just forcing companies to do that. So do they have the same thing in the US as well? So
in the US, they have EEOC compliance, which is similar, but it's kind of like the employment equity. So there is a lot of talk about the federal pay equity in the US, but I'm not as familiar with the legislation on that yet. It's not impacting us at this time. So.
Yeah, I'm sure that's going to be really hard to get pushed through. It shouldn't be, but it probably will be. A lot of companies will be pushing back on that, because there are a number of certifications. So I've had a number of companies that have been on the show recently where their CHROs have been talking about they're being certified for pay equity in their company, and they've got there's a couple of external companies that are accredited, whatever that means, and they come in and kind of do a deep dive into the organization and kind of get the results, and you will know we've got 100% pay equity across the whole business, etc., which is great, but it's not a legal requirement to do it,
right?
As well. So one of the other things that we kind of touched on a little bit as well, you mentioned earlier about ROI. You've been doing this a while now. How do you demonstrate ROI of the work that you do? Obviously you have the numbers, but there's a bit more to it than that in terms of getting the buy-in and the return on investment.
Yeah, I think it's tough. I think it's tough when you're in a support function to sometimes always justify ROI, because you're not making money really for the most part. You're saving money, or you're saving time. So I always look for ways to show that. And part of it's partnership, that urban legend, like people know that you've done stuff and changed stuff and implemented processes to make things easier. But with everything that we do, we look at what's the opportunity cost in time and making things quicker. So if we can use data to hire people quicker, hire the right person, or decrease turnover, then we can quantify that.
It is a direct number associated to turnover, for example. Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. And we boil that down. And when we look at the HR business partners time, I just calculate that on, if it was taking them, 60 hours to do this activity, but now we've created, spent 10 hours to create a workflow, that means that 60 hours never has to happen. We just quantify their salaries and come up with a dollar amount. So, and a lot of PR. So I think a lot of HR people, I'm sure that's changing, but I know when I joined here, that communication, that branding, that this is what we do, this is why we do it, here's where we add value, here's how that impacts your business, making sure that you're pushing out that PR. I think that helps with that connection.
That's quite a new thing, isn't it, though? That's quite a new thing, though, right? Because I'm seeing the blend between HR, people analytics, and marketing come closer and closer together. But you're seeing these kind of emerging roles in companies where there are people in the HR function now and the people analytics function, which their sole role is to talk about the great work that's happening and make sure that you talk about that, because you're all right. A lot of the great work that happens, no one knows about.
Agreed. I find that too, moving to people analytics and then moving to compensation, and the number of people and people that are pretty well known in the industry and kind of being seen as leaders, willing to connect, willing to talk to you, willing to share, willing to help you with your journey. Like it's really great. I really enjoy that. And I think it helps everyone. Like we can help each other with the knowledge that we have. It's not secret, and let's support each other to make our roles and make our organizations better.
Another thing that a lot of people are talking about now is new kind of employee listening techniques, and especially given the last year, we want to kind of get a pulse on our organization. Have you been doing a lot of work in this area?
We do it really direct work. So we do actual pulses through our survey provider and reach out about different things. And obviously with COVID, we did a lot of pulsing during that time to see how people were feeling about the communications. And again, we're family owned, pretty traditional organization. So leveraging technology to communicate or having people work remote was a big change for us to hit the ground running with that, and leveraging tools like Teams or doing video messaging from our CEO, our co-CEOs wasn't really something that was done proactively, continuously prior to COVID. So we really wanted to make sure that employees felt connected. They felt that the organization was keeping them safe and that they could continue to work. And we were very fortunate that the majority of our employees were able to continue to work throughout COVID. So we didn't have issues of having to let people go or lay them off, which was great. But we really wanted to make sure that connection was happening. So using those pulses or using them after certain events or activities that we have. We haven't got into the indirect listening, like doing email scans or some of the other questionable activities. That all makes me a little nervous. I think
who do you use for your pulse surveys? Do you do like things like sentiment analysis and stuff like that, or you haven't got to that yet?
No, we use Perceptyx as our survey provider, our annual survey provider, and then we can build custom pulse surveys whenever we like and just pick the audience and send them out. So.
Have you worked with the HR team to help also target and customize that communication? I think one of the things that happened, unfortunately, during COVID is we like bombarded employees with a lot, like, you know, and then most of the time it was like so much in there that wasn't also relevant to you that you end up just tuning out, as opposed to tailoring the messages, especially when you got a global business. It becomes like, you know, you get what I'm saying.
Agreed. Yeah, we interestingly enough, we had done some communication pulses in our annual survey back before I even got into this role, when I was leading talent and leading the survey. Mm-hmm. So we had already started some, you know, how do we best connect with you? What works? Yeah. Strategies, and set up, you know, screens in our facilities, and try to multi-connect with people. And we do, you know, a lot of the Facebook groups and stuff, which is kind of, it's now becoming old school, but at the beginning it was new school at the time. Yeah. But just looking at different ways to connect and gather that feedback. So I wouldn't say we over communicate. We try to keep everything, you know, Friday afternoon, you're going to get a video message and you're going to get an update. So people knew, okay, I'm going to look forward to that and know that that's coming, and keep it concise. So I think people felt there was enough communication, there was the right communication, and they knew they could get it in different ways, whether they were remote or on site.
Nice.
And then obviously we did extra stuff with our teams, like just make sure that we have that face-to-face interaction, because this is the first organization that I've been with where people weren't really used to or comfortable working remote, whereas everywhere else I've been, that was kind of the norm. So yeah.
What do you think that you do you think you'll stick to doing kind of somebody's what practices do you think that you'll continue doing? Because I think a lot of companies realize, oh, wow, we can do this, and it's and they've made changes. Or, for example, you're talking about those kind of video messages from your CEOs, etc. You know, do you think you'll continue a lot of that stuff?
I think we will. I mean, we've recently done our first ever virtual town hall, where we had some of our different divisional leaders come in and talk, and it was a good blend of personal versus professional conversation. My team's always been pitching to have a JDI podcast, but
come on,
that hasn't gone anywhere yet.
It's because you got to host it. That's why.
I think it'd be great. It'd be really interesting, amazing, particularly with the diversity of our businesses.
And you have different guests on. Listen, you're preaching to the choir. I've been pitching this for ages, and especially with the new generation coming through and how they want to consume content. Or everyone, to be honest, and it's just flexible. The one challenge, and this is the thing that you have to be brave with, and I know many companies have, is to put it external, put it on Spotify, put it on iTunes, put it on Google Play. Be comfortable that your internal voice should match your external voice, and that's where some companies are going wrong. They've got like these internal podcasts that are on the intranet where it's just a video recording, but don't try and bring people to you. Be where they are. If you have employees that already use iTunes or Spotify or SoundCloud or wherever, put it everywhere. And I feel like that as a way for companies to tune in and hear from different leaders in the business. Imagine if I'm looking to work in your organization and I come across your podcast, I get to hear from people like me that are working in that role, or the CEO, the why, the purpose, the values. Like, it's just going to, you know, just smooth that conversation, and then people want to understand who is this company I'm going to be working for, who are the people, what are their values, are they aligned with mine? So it doesn't cost anything. It doesn't really cost that much. You know, I built this entire show from my bedroom by buying this microphone, and you know, I had to teach myself how to edit and do other things. It wasn't easy, but there's companies around the world with billions of pounds of budget who have zero following and engagement with employees, so they can do something simple. We've got like there's what company is it? Oh, it's so annoying. There's a company, there's a manufacturing company that we speak to, and they've got a radio station, and it plays in the factories. So what's cool is they can communicate with in-office workers, at-home workers, and factory workers, and they stream it for 1 hour a day into all the factories. It's a global business. It's really annoying. I can't remember the name now of the company. And they say that it's incredible because, you know, if those people are on the shop floor, they can't get their mobile out and listen but there's a sense of community they're building amongst every employee. And it's just a simple little 1 hour radio show that they do a day. And it's just like an update on what's happening. And then they invite different people on throughout the business. Yeah.
That's a great idea. Maybe I'll steal that and suggest that to the
Yeah, because then everyone can you can engage the whole business in that way. Honestly, it's an amazing idea. And that company, it's really annoying. I'll remember it and I'll put in the description for anyone listening, because they sent me a link. They also were brave enough to do what I said and put it external. I remember that they had an episode where the CEO and CHRO were talking about like having a terrible quarter and this went really badly and we missed these targets. It was so refreshingly open and honest and transparent, and this is what we're going to do about it, and here's the steps we're going to take. I was like, wow, how nice would it be to work at a company where it's just super transparent in that way, because people know anyway. So you're trying to, you can not say anything at all, which is probably the worst thing that you can do, or you can put it out there. I've had conversations with some amazing companies about doing this, and most of the time it's sort of the PR and comms team and the legal team just shut it down. I get there you need to be very careful about what you can and cannot say. But normally it's the PR. Normally the legal team somehow find a way that they cannot do it. But hopefully you have better luck to be able to do it. Yeah. If you do it, please let me know, because I'll promote it. I'd love to see it.
For sure.
And love to hear, especially with the heritage, the history of the organization, the stories I'm sure that some of those leaders can tell, and the family themselves. I'm excited about it. I want to run the podcast. I think it'll be amazing as well. So yeah, that'll be cool. How do you stay up to date with all the different changes and innovations in the space? Because there's so much happening. Like every other day, there's a new tool, a new technology, a new vendor claiming to solve everything. How do you do that?
I think it's probably twofold. I read voraciously, and I'm really active on LinkedIn, and there's so much information that's shared there. But I also keep my eye on the foundational piece. So there's going to be a new shiny tool every day.
Yeah.
But we've kind of picked our core analytical tools. So, we use Alteryx and Tableau as our main tools that we build our visualizations with and do our analysis with. And we have looked at other products, but at this time we haven't decided to go anywhere there. So, there's so much out there, and I agree, everything's going to fix every problem, but I've been through multiple implementations of various types of software in my previous role, and the sales pitch is always really good. The work and lifting that you have to do to get to that sales pitch level is, I've never seen it realized fully yet in anything that I've implemented or been part of. So I think it's get your foundation right, keep it simple. Like, you don't need all of these great shiny tools. And I think if if you're doing everything on spreadsheets, you probably need to think about a way to improve that. But if you've got some systems now, you build a nice clean data warehouse inside, you keep it simple, you're probably in good shape. So I think I get hit up by salespeople almost every day for a new product. And I just say, happy to have you in my network, but not interested in adding anything right now.
I want to jump into a quick fire round before I let you go. And I'm going to add a few new questions just randomly, just to throw you off even more. So first question, what was the number one thing that was holding you back from becoming a leader in the people analytics space specifically?
Access to data, I would say.
It's never going to end.
It's never going to end. No, we have a bunch of different systems and tools, and they don't all talk to each other. And it takes a long time to get access to certain things. And then when you get it, you gotta do stuff with it to get it aligned. But that's the number one thing. And I think that would be the complaint of all my peers on the analytics steering committee and the rest of the divisions. It's getting the right access to data, getting it timely, and then being able to actually use it. Number one thing.
Maybe one day. Although I think the day that you do get access to everything is like the most terrible day, because it means everyone's rights have just gone out the window as well. So we've got to be very careful, because I do see certain companies and individuals crossing the line. You know who you are.
I won't do that. I'm very controlled in that. I don't like that feature of.
Yeah, it's like we know when this person's going to leave the company because we have access to their email, their LinkedIn, and we can track it. I'm like, whoa. Anyways, what's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
Ooh, that's a great question. Oh my goodness.
I know. Sorry, I threw it on you.
I don't know. I don't know if I've received the best business advice, but I would say in my experience, the best thing that I can say of is get to know your business. So, understand what's happening in your operations, understand your customers, even particularly if you're in a support role. I find a lot of HR practitioners are what I would call very HR. So, they want to create the policies, they want to be the gatekeepers, and they don't want to go out and get their hands dirty and understand what's happening outside in the actual plants or in the business or with the customers. Do that, because that gives you two things. It helps you understand how you fit into that value chain and where you can add value. And it also helps you understand their pain points. So I would say I've learned that the hard way in my career, and in advice that I've gotten, maybe more critical advice to go out and do that. But I'd say that's the number one thing. Know your business, and spend that time, meet the customers, get involved in request for proposal, whatever you can do that's outside of your typical HR box, is really important to help you learn and be a better practitioner for your business.
Great. How do you take care of your own mental health and well-being? What are some of the practices that you have in place?
I run, so I'm a runner and I work out. And if I don't do that, so if I have a day where I have to literally sit at my desk for 8 hours, it's not good for me. So it helps me clear my mind. I can think about things better, get outside, go for a run, do that. That's my biggest thing. And then when I'm at home, I like to cook, and I do like to travel, which hasn't been possible due to COVID, but the more time I spend outside and do that, that's the biggest thing, and kind of know what your threshold are. When you get to that point of, I know when I want to hurt people or yell or freak out, I'm at that point where it's, I just got to go get outside 10 minutes, go for a walk, go for a run, clear my head. That really helps me stay on track.
Yeah. It just releases all of that out of the body and the mind. When you go for exercise, just kind of it's like a purge. All the stress, the anxiety, it's just bye. And normally you go in not feeling great. I don't know about you, I'm like, oh, I've got to do the run. But when you finish it, you're like, oh, it feels so good. Yeah, that's the hardest part, is actually getting going as well. But I'm the same. If I don't work out, I'd end up not sleeping well, then I don't eat well, and then it's like a vicious circle. Then I feel more anxious, and then it's a vicious circle. Whereas if I can keep that going consistently, it's a knock-on effect for everything else as
Agreed. Well. Yeah.
Last question, or second from last question. How would your family describe what you do for a living?
That's funny. So I have two children. I have a son, 21, and a daughter, 19, and then my husband. He's an ops person, so he would say I'm probably one of the most vicious, operationally minded, not HR people that he knows. So I don't know how he would describe it. He would probably say that I want to, take over the world and take over the business and what I'm doing. And he'd be relatively honest about that. So, and the kids probably, after I changed roles and I wasn't able to fire people anymore, they weren't as interested in what I do. So I would suspect neither of them have any concerns what I do. My son's a musician, and my daughter's studying neurology and pharmacology at McGill University. So she's definitely a science nerd. So she's gonna get pretty familiar with what I do when she starts doing experiments and asking for help. But yeah, I would say they know I go to an office and I do stuff. So
fair enough. I know I bet you've never been asked that question before.
I haven't. No, I know they know I work. I think they were way more interested when I actually had to hire and fire people.
They kind of understand that a bit more, right? It makes sense. Thinking that it's like The Apprentice or something like that. Last question. What's one thing about the business that you're most excited about moving forward?
People analytics itself, or our organization?
The business, yeah. Your role, why you get up in the morning. What's the most exciting part about the work you're doing moving forward in the business?
I think there's a whole opportunity to really change change HR as a whole, but also change the organization. And so I'm really pleased to see that, people analytics has become more of a hot topic and more an expectation for HR people, because I do think it's the easiest way to align to the operations. They're out there getting customers and making money and trying to streamline things and turn a profit and create opportunities for people and keep people employed and do that. And what we can do within HR with our data and proving the value of all the activities that we do, and not just be the people police. It's really interesting, and I think there's just so much opportunity there, and it's really exciting to see people in our organization grow and develop and use data to change what they do day in and day out. But I think that's going to change the entire landscape of all companies if HR can really get to the table, understand that it's a real value add. So I'm really excited about that and seeing that progress across the organization. And you don't have to, again, be in that predictive shiny box space at all. You've got so much information to change what you do and make your job easier and make the job of your business easier. So I think that's really exciting.
Amazing. Well, I think this part-time job is going to continue a bit longer. for a while at least, I'm sure. Well, thanks so much for taking the time out to join us. It means a lot, and I appreciate everything, and thanks so much for sharing your advice and your learnings with our listeners. I'm sure they learned a lot too. You're probably gonna get a lot more LinkedIn requests after this one. Apart from that, is that the best place for people to connect with you? So my last question was going to be, where can people connect with you? LinkedIn?
Absolutely. LinkedIn is easy. I'm on it every day. I will answer a message, and I'm happy to take any connections. And if vendors reach out, I'll respond nicely and say that right now we're not adding anything. I'm welcome to add you to my network, but yeah, I'll accept invitations as long as they're well aligned, and happy to talk and share with anyone at any time. 100%.
Amazing. Well, look, good luck with everything, and look forward to chatting again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
Bye-bye.